Selling a little or a lot? Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your own online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage? Shopify's there to help you grow. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 36% better on average compared to the other leading commerce platforms. Because businesses that grow, grow with Shopify. Get a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo. Shopify.com/promo.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran, I can't ask how you are, because technically you are away somewhere in Europe with the Baroness, which is a bit confusing. And also we've just recorded a question spot, so I know exactly how you are. So let's just say, Kieran, that this is an interview we've been promising our listeners for quite some time, and I think it's worth the wait. It's with Maheta Molango, Chief Executive of the Professional Footballers Association. This is what he had to say in quite a lengthy chat, but it's very much worth the listen. Let's get this out of the way. Obviously, my first question is, why has no one ever told me you played for Brighton?
That's probably because the world is full of hidden Palace fans who want to wipe Brighton out of the map, you know?
All right, well, taking Brighton out, tell us a little bit about your history and how you came to your role in the PFA.
Well, I probably had a little bit of an unusual journey because I started by being a player and played in different countries, including in England for the likes of the almighty Brighton, but also Wrexham, Oldham, Lincoln City, Grays Athletic. So I really had a good taste of football at different levels and of the struggles that sometimes being a football player carries. You know, because people only see the nice side of it, but it's full of journeymen such as myself who ultimately understand what it means to play for Atletico Madrid and thinking you're going to be the next Fernando Torres, but before you know it, you're playing in League Two or you're playing in Conference, and you realize that that it's tough. It's tough. So I played football, and then since my dad was a very strict African father who said to me that football was not a proper job, he always pushed me to actually study. So I had the chance to study law whilst I was playing, which enabled me to join a law firm once I decided to finish my career. And I spent 10 years as an employment law attorney at a US law firm. And then I transitioned into club management when I was offered the chance to become the CEO of Real Mallorca in Spain, which was also a very interesting journey because we faced all sorts of adversity, but also all sorts of success, because we were able to achieve a double promotion from the equivalent of League One all the way to the Premier League in 2 years. So I really had the chance to really understand Spanish football from the lower division all the way to the very top. And I guess I'm telling you all this because probably this mix of ingredients which I had in my fridge probably enabled me then to be the most appropriate cook for the job I'm doing right now, because I've had the chance to see football from different angles, and I think it has helped me a lot in what I do right now, because I think I can easily put myself into the shoes of a player, but equally of an executive, because I've been on the other side of the barrier just 3 years ago. But at the same time, I've also done job work for FIFA, because I was, and hopefully I'm still a director of one of their programs to train executive around the globe. So yeah, it's interesting when you see football from different angles. I think it puts you in an interesting position to do the job I'm doing right now.
Let's talk, Maheta, about the big story of the summer, and one we've spoken on the pod about a lot, and that's player welfare and your legal case. Now, alongside European leagues and other European players' unions, you're suing FIFA because of, and I quote, the overloaded and unworkable football calendar. The obvious question is, what jurisdiction does the European Commission have over a global body like FIFA?
So so first of all, we need to clarify that basically we have started two legal cases. So there's one case that we as PFA, the French Union, the Italian Union, and FIFPro Europe has started in Belgium before a Belgian court, because in reality what we've done is we've sued both FIFA and the Belgian Federation. So that was the anchor to be able to then file the claim in Belgium. And we have filed that claim on the basis of a potential breach of the European Convention of Human Rights, and more specifically around the right to holidays, the right to paid vacation, and the right to collective bargaining. Because although people tend to forget it, football players are employees like any other employee. Yes, very privileged one who do what they love as a profession, but they remain employees, and hence they remain subject to same rights and protection as a normal employee. So we as a union have filed a claim before a Belgian court on the basis of a breach of the European Charter for Human Rights. So that's the first procedure that was launched about 3 or 4 weeks ago. We have now announced this week that we're going to start a second procedure before the European Commission. And this is a procedure that we'll be doing hand in hand with the leagues. So we have created what we've called a coalition that would be basically FIFPro Europe, on which, so I sit on the board of FIFPro Europe, and the leagues, which is basically the Premier League, Serie A, and La Liga, who together have decided to team up. And in that case, it's not so much about the right to holiday, but rather what we're challenging is the ability of FIFA to be able to be both competition organizer and regulator, And I must say that the situation is so bad that we've even managed to put around the same table people who typically don't even talk to each other. Because it was funny, because in some of those meetings, in our cases, we actually have a pretty decent relationship with the Premier League, but in other countries, the league and the union, barely talk to each other. And yet FIFA has managed to unify us to say that situation is just not sustainable and not tenable.
Are you optimistic of success? Because it seems to me solving the problem of too many games is almost impossible, especially when so many of them are lucrative friendlies or pre-season tours that the clubs are very keen on.
I think it's important to be clear on the fact, and I've said that to FIFA directly as well, is this is not an attack on FIFA. At least from our perspective, it's not an attack on FIFA. What we're saying is we play too many games. What we're saying is that each competition look at their games in silo, and hence each of them would say to you, I actually fulfill the duty that I have towards you, because if I only look in isolation to my calendar, it's fine. So the reason for which we have gone against FIFA is not because we have a personal issue with FIFA. In fact, to be honest with you, a lot of stuff they do I'm actually absolutely fine with and I'm supportive of. But on the calendar specifically, what is happening is FIFA is the only body that would be able to apply standards across the board worldwide. And they are the parents of football, and hence it makes sense for us to actually file a claim against them in the hope that they will be able to apply standards that would apply across the board, that would prevent clubs to do nonsensical post-season tours, that would prevent UEFA from expanding even more the Champions League format or creating new competition, that would prevent potentially FIFA themselves to creating new competition, which frankly do not make much sense other than generating new income, to be able to probably fulfill commitment they have with their own federation, who ultimately are their voters.
You say it's not a personal attack on FIFA, but Gianni Infantino takes things very personally, Maheta.
It's a pity, because it shouldn't be the case. As I said to you before, the reality is that FIFA has changed, and I think since he has joined FIFA, I think they have improved. That's my honest personal opinion compared to what FIFA used to be. I think there has been an improvement, and we need to give credit to him and to his administration for that. But at the same time, I think sometimes, when you have a professional relationship with someone and you behave like grown-ups, sometimes you disagree, Kevin, and sometimes if you try hard to reach an agreement, sometimes you need to agree to disagree and let the third party decide what is right and what is not right, and try to find a solution. So we see this as being professional. My job is to try to do the best to protect the players, sometimes even against their own wishes, because if you ask players, they love to play. But it comes to a stage where, for as much as you love to play, you cannot have players such as the one who went to the Euros defending the Three Lions. There's one specific player who has played 130 games in 2 years, Kevin. But then, when he plays on the pitch, the fans don't see in the background how many games he's played, and people expect him to be, buzzing and running and being at the top level, and you feel sorry for people who are such nice people, super committed. They love to play for the country, but frankly, we have asked them to do stuff that are humanly at the limit. It's literally at the limit.
One more question on this, Maheta, and this one I'm very interested in. When it comes to player workload in this country, are you also consulting with the League Managers Association about this? Do they tend to agree with you that players are playing too much?
Yeah, I've got a very good relationship with Richard Bevan, and we work closely with the LMA. I think what we have seen, Kieran and Kevin, is this has gone from being an issue that seemed to be limited to a very kind of small number of privileged players who, some of the most skeptical fans would say, come on, you make a lot of money, get on with it, you're going to be okay. From an issue that right now, industry-wide, everyone sees as being a problem because it's simply harming the quality of what you see on the pitch. So it's no longer just a question of saying, come on, guys, you make a lot of money, get on with it. No, this is killing the game. And what I found very interesting is that even the most skeptical fans, even the leagues, so everyone across the board sees that this is harming the game, and everyone sees the consequences of that. So, when we see the FA being forced to scrap the replays, let's be very clear on the fact that this is a direct consequence of the pressure put by UEFA and FIFA decision to expand the calendar, because something has to give. And the one who are affected by scrapping the replays of the FA Cup are not the big clubs. Those are the smaller clubs, the more modest clubs, the more modest players, and this is only the start. I can tell you from now that what will happen next is there'll be pressure to reduce the number of clubs in the Premier League from 20 to 18. And the one who pay the price ain't going to be the big players. Don't worry about that. It's going to be the more humble, the more modest players. And that's what we keep saying to the players when we go to visits. And to be honest with you, across the pyramid, from League 2 all the way to the Premier League, they completely understand that this is an industry-wide issue that needs urgent addressing.
Talking of the Premier League, another hot topic this summer is the anchor salary cap proposals that they've put forward. Kieran has views on this, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I'm glad that you call it a cap, because it is a cap. And I think it is very surprising when you hear people saying that, it's a cap or it's not a cap. It's a cap. When you put a limit to someone can spend, and when you say beyond that you cannot spend anymore, this is a cap. And you can call it whatever you want, but it's a cap. So that's the starting point. The second one is, our feeling, for as much as we get along very well with the Premier League on a number of different issues, on that specific one, we really feel that I think they are rushing this through. I'm not sure that they really thought carefully about the unintended consequence of what they're trying to achieve. I really struggle to understand how, on the one hand, we've been told that this won't bite, but on the other hand, we've been told it's there to improve the competitive balance. So how can it not bite and improve the competitive balance? It's a mystery I've not been able to solve, but maybe you guys can help me. So I do think that it's a time where we as football need to show common sense. It's a time where we in football need to show alignment. I think we have been giving a strong warning by the government that football needs to start solving its own issue internally. And I think those type of suggestions do not help. It just doesn't help, because it's divisive. It creates unintended consequences, which I think we're starting to see what it can do, and we just need to be very careful. And most importantly, let's just not, force things through in a rush without, consulting properly. We cannot, on the one hand, ask FIFA and UEFA to consult properly, and then domestically we do exactly what FIFA and UEFA do with us internationally. So it's one where we're very open to talk and discuss, and we'll do that, but it needs to be done properly. It needs to be done properly, and needs to be done in a way that reflects a proper consultation process.
Well, Kieran, can you help Maheta here? What are some of these unintended consequences, and remind our listeners what your view is?
Well, in terms of what is the proposal, it's a case of taking the TV revenues generated by the side that finishes bottom of the Premier League and then multiplying that by a random number, which I think could be somewhere like 4.5 or 5. And that then becomes the cap on wages, which will sit alongside UEFA's PSR regulations, which is going to be 70% of transfer fees plus broadcast money plus gate money plus sponsorship money can be spent on a combination of wages, agents' fees, amortization, impairments, less this, that, and the other. So it seems to have been ill thought out. The very fact that they can't think of what the magic number is going to be. If you're going to put forward a proposal, then you do your research. As an academic, that's the way that we operate. We look at an issue, we do research, we get everybody around the table. And what the Premier League seems to be doing is just imposing it, and it's not going to be negotiated. The unintended consequences are that I think it will result in gaps getting bigger rather than smaller. I think it will increase the chances of those clubs that feel that they are being targeted, and those are the clubs with the large amounts of commercial income, which is being completely disregarded. Those clubs are more likely to then want to go back into a Super League because that relationship won't hold. And we've still got the drip of, we've seen Jim Ratcliffe come in at Manchester United. He describes Super League as an initiative. We've got Todd Bowley saying, well, we're not in favour of it now, but we're not ruling it out. And the pressure coming from A22 and the other parties who are effectively the voice piece of Florentino Perez, trying to sell this product. And the unintended consequences are Crystal Palace could finish in the top 4 of the Premier League and they wouldn't qualify for this Champions League competition. And if people think that's good, they don't. And even as a Brighton fan, I think it's awful. If you finish in top 4, you deserve to play at the top tier in Europe. So these are my concerns. And given that the players are employees, there should be consultation. If it's going to impact upon your workplace, anybody that imposes rules is in danger of alienating the workforce.
It seems to me that the Premier League, for want of a better phrase, have been throwing their weight around a little bit more in the last couple of seasons. They're obviously very unhappy with the Football Governance Bill and the independent regulator. Are you happy that the new government is committed to both of those things?
I mean, look, we've always said that it's not a good news when football is unable to solve its own problem. I think we should have been able to find a way to fix it. If in the end we are not, then look, I think we need to be supportive of the government, as we have been throughout the whole process, to try to make sure that we get it right. I think it's very important that we get it right, because for as much as there are things to fix, as someone who has been operating abroad, I can tell you that a lot of leagues can only wish to look like anywhere near what the Premier League is. And also, again, as someone who has, for example, followed very closely Italy for years, I can only wish that Italy, the Italian national team and Italian football would be anywhere near what we do in England. Let's not forget that England is a country that has reached the last 2 finals of the European Championship, semi-final of the World Cup, producing talent like at a level which is unbelievable, with a very successful league. So surely something is working in England. So again, maybe it's because I've got this kind of external look into the situation. I would say, yes, there are things to be fixed, of course, but I think overall we have a very good product. So I think we need to get it right. And our role throughout the whole process being to say, let's identify what are the things that needs to be fixed. From our perspective, for example, the fit and proper test for the owners is crucial. The problem is who run those clubs, who own those clubs. This is a very important piece of work where the government can help. But let's be sensible and let's not kill what has been working very successfully for a number of years and remains the envy of the world. This is the honest opinion from someone who looks for this from hopefully an independent perspective.
I want to come on in a moment to some of the programmes that the PFA have introduced recently. But first, there are a couple of issues that our listeners have raised with us. Women's football in particular, Nick Andrews-Govain is one of many listeners to point out that there are professional players down to tier 3 in women's football now, and obviously you're representing them. But apart from pay disparity, are there any separate issues that women footballers face that particularly need your support?
When we look at the support we provide to female players and the one we provide to male players, We have the feeling that on the women's football side, we're still at the 1.0 version of the type of issue that we face. We're still facing from some very basic kind of things which are so crucial for the league to be able to succeed. One of them being, for example, the licensing criteria. If you want to have a club, you need to be able to commit a certain amount of money to have certain standards of professionalism. You just cannot have a women's team just because it's nice or it sounds nice and it's a nice marketing tool. If you want to have a women's team, you need to make the investment. And I think the league will have some tough decision to make going forward as to who do they accept in the league and who they don't accept in the league, because it's not acceptable to have teams that are so-called professional when in reality some of the stuff that you hear are just horrific, just horrendous stories and at the very top level you'd be very surprised by some of the stories that we hear at supposedly the very top level. So it's we're encouraged by the fact that it's a fantastic group of players. They are focused, they're militant, they're determined, they understand the strength of the collective, and we've achieved stuff with them that we can only dream of on the men's side. For example, the guaranteed 30% bonus for national team at the last World Cup, Women World Cup, was an unbelievable milestone. To be able to guarantee that 30% of the money that goes to the federation goes to players. This was achieved because of the profile of those players who really understand the collective strength. But at the same time, we're still so behind in terms of the very basic kind of standard that need to apply in women's football, and we need to work on it.
Want a website with unmatched power, speed, and control? Try Bluehost Cloud, the new web hosting plan from Bluehost, built for WordPress creators by WordPress experts. With 100% uptime, incredible load times, and 24/7 WordPress priority support, your site will be lightning fast with global reach. And with Bluehost Cloud, your sites can handle surges in traffic no matter how big. Plus, you automatically get daily backups and world-class security. Get started now at Bluehost.com.
The National League is also a source of frustration for a lot of our listeners, Maheta. Marcia Big, in particular, is a Chesterfield fan. She points out the league is classed as elite but not professional, which meant that during Chesterfield's time there, they had a case of 2 seriously injured players, one of whom was in the PFA and therefore had access to St George's Park and improved player recovery specialists, and one of whom didn't. It seems baffling that the National League isn't recognised as a pro league and that players there can't become members of the PFA.
Yeah, it's probably a broader discussion, to be honest. It's probably a discussion as to, National League has evolved a lot, and probably the arrival of the new owners at Wrexham, Chesterfield, Notts County back in the day. So you used to have, and you still have some big clubs there. Obviously, in our case, I think 80% of the players in the National League are former members, so they have access to the PFA. So it's a very limited part of the players who do not have access to the PFA. For us, it's quite simple. The minute that your league turns professional and you are yourself a professional, there's not even a discussion. You automatically have access to the PFA. So I guess the question is, the wider discussion as to whether the league needs to be recognized as professional or not. But also it needs to be a two-way process, i.e. we take on the players, but equally we need to be recognized formally by the league as being the representative. Otherwise, we cannot force ourselves onto certain tables if we not formally represent them. So it needs to go both ways, no? But it's definitely something that we have on our radar.
Kieran, there seems to be a sense, certainly in some of our discussions, that the National League has a touch of the maverick about it in certain issues, and this seems to be one of them. What are your views on this?
The National League is a problem child from a finance point of view. There doesn't appear to be consistency there. Certainly at board level, you get the feeling that there's not representation for all clubs, and I know that has caused frustration on an individual club level. So to me it's still a quite archaic organisation that hasn't really moved with the times. We had the author of the report into the distribution of monies within the Premier League during COVID come on the show, and that was quite disturbing to hear the self-interest, which is there's too much there's too much of that and not enough collective interest and for the greater good of the product. And it's great. I mean, the National League clubs are fantastic to watch, but I think they're let down at executive level.
Let's come on to a couple of your programmes, Maheta, two of which I'm particularly interested in. The first one is your new football and management degree course, which Kieran very much approves of, which you have Arsene Wenger as course director. How did this come about?
Well, it came about because I think there was a recognition of two things. One, that the traditional curriculum and the traditional format of university, etc., was just not aligned with the needs of the players in terms of the actual practicality and logistics of it. I.e., a lot of courses are in the morning, you train in the afternoon, and I've gone through myself like this crazy experience of trying to study whilst you play. And I think it took far too much effort. And unless you're very driven and very determined, you end up quitting because it's just impossible, almost impossible to do. And second, there was recognition that, and I really strongly feel about that, I think in far too many occasions, we are missing in key positions people who really care and understand the game. And far too often there were too many players who thought that because I played 500 games, I'm going to be ready to be a sporting director or a CEO, and that's just not the case. It's just not the case. You need to accompany that with a proper training and academic kind of background, and then you become an unbeatable candidate for those roles. So, the combination of understanding that there was a need for different structure, and second, that there was a need as an industry to have more of those guys in strategic position, meant that we decided to create a PFA business school, which is a school that is tailored to the need of the players in terms of how they learn. They learn on the job. So it's very pragmatic, it's very practical, and it's tailored to their need in terms of the scheduling as well. So on the one hand, we've launched postgraduate courses. So there's one to become an executive, another one to become a sporting director, and then a number of smaller courses, such as, for example, data, emotional intelligence, EDI, etc. So that's postgraduate courses. And now recently we launched a new one, which is an undergrad one. It's a degree. It's a 3-year degree. The director of that course will be Arsene Wenger, and it's aimed as basically bridging the gap between BTech or A levels and the postgraduate that we offer. So I'm very proud of that, because it means that in England, a professional football player would not have to quit his studies and will be able to do the whole journey whilst playing football. BTech, A level, undergrad, postgraduate, and all this whilst playing at a very high level, or at whatever level they are currently playing at. So it's something that I strongly feel about. It's something that our players board very strongly felt about. And we're delighted to have the professors such as Kieran, who were able to explain difficult things in an easy way to understand.
He does that very well, doesn't he?
It's not easy, because some of the stuff that he lectures is tedious, it's complex, and to make it attractive and easy to understand, it's tough. And to be fair, the people are delighted. So, we'll keep him very close to us.
What also, Maheta, I mean, I think everybody would agree that the more players there are, the more ex-players there are at the highest levels of football administration, the better things will be. But also it strikes me that this is a very good way to make sure that there are more ex-black players, ex-women players, ex-Asian players as well, because at the top levels of football administration, they're virtually invisible, aren't they?
I always say that for me, the change starts at the top, and if you have always the same board members and same profile, then you always have the same outcome in terms of what you see further down the pyramid. So I think there's a variety of people who are keen and now have the training to be able to do that. And I think once you give them the training, you also counter the excuse of the pool is too small to choose from. Well, that's not true. The pool is there, the pool is prepared, and they're well trained and they're ready to occupy those positions. So we hope to be able to make a positive contribution to the industry by providing those training courses.
And tell us as well, Maheta, about your new player to match official program. Is this meant to be a fast track? Because I have to say, I'm not a massive fan of the idea of fast tracking some players to become referees. Certainly some of the... I wouldn't mind Pat Nevin. He'd be a good referee. Ali McCoist, I'm not entirely sure. But is this meant to be a fast track to get players to become officials?
It's a very good question. I think it's a legitimate concern that you have. And again, this goes back to the point I was making before. For us, having played the game does not guarantee that you're good, whatever you want to do next. Maybe coach, maybe executive, or maybe ref. Now, we really believe similarly that if you do accept and acknowledge that playing the game is one thing, but if you can complement that with the proper training, then you can be a very valuable asset. Then yes, then we're strongly in favor of people being able to have access to refereeing position. I must say that this project could only have taken place with the strong support of the PGMOL. Frankly, I think Howard has been a fantastic ally that we've had ever since he joined. I think he really kind of modernized the organization, and we really found a strong kind of ally in that journey. We decided to launch with them this program, which basically will help us identifying 12 people to be able to become an elite ref within 3 years. But again, it will not force everyone through. So only the people are ready, and maybe we'll start with 12, but only one is ready, or two are ready. So it's not a case of forcing the way through. It's a question of finding the right people who could become referees. And by the way, the fast track is not just applicable to players. So the PGMOL have created a fast track for ordinary people. So it's just tagging along players in the program that already exists. There's already a thought process amongst PGMOL to see. It cannot be the case that you need to go through all the steps and it takes you like 15 years to get to the top if you're good. You know, it needs to be a question of if you're good, we'll push you and support you. So it's not just a more favorable treatment to players. Yeah.
I like the way you make a distinction between players and ordinary people. It's very important. In the same way that all comedians refer to non-comedians as civilians, basically. It's just to make sure everyone knows there is a difference. We are a football finance podcast, Maheta, so I have got some proper football finance questions for you. There's one story we've covered in detail recently, and it's one that football fans have been very dubious about, and that's this recent idea, it seems, of academy players being sold between various clubs to meet profit and sustainability rules. Are you happy with that?
An intended consequence of a rule that has not been thought through properly. You know, and for the likes of Kieran, it shouldn't be surprising because as he always says during his courses, you know, the numbers can tell you whatever you want them to tell you, you know, and you can be very creative as to how you present accounts. And ultimately, this is a very good example as to how let's be very careful about what we try to achieve here. Because you think that you do something right, and in the end, you know, it cannot be right that academy players are sacrificed for the sake of meeting certain kind of thresholds, because academy players are more than just assets. Those are the connection to your club. It's what, you know, let's be honest, if you and I go to the end of course show, your kids don't fit in mine, you always want to see your kids first. And it's a legitimate feeling that you have, you know, and I think football fans want to see people from the academy. It's the connection to the local kind of communities, the connection to the club, and it's not even good for the player themselves, because sometimes they're transferred at a stage where they should be staying there, they should be growing first, and then whenever you're ready, you go. But, you know, when you come to a new club, they pay big money for you, it's a big pressure, you know, and this is the first step towards failure normally.
I'm glad you made that last point about them being young, because I think people forget you're talking about 18, 19, 20-year-olds. They're still, yeah, my son would disagree, but they're still kids at that age, and they're becoming almost bartering chips. There's something distasteful about that to a lot of football fans, isn't there?
Sometimes we really forget those are very young kids, you know. Those are very young kids, and it's unsettling to move from Manchester to London, and you're still talking about the same country. You know, it's not easy. It's not easy. It's a different reality. You're not with your friends. It's a different environment. The pressure is high. It's not easy. And again, I won't reveal names, but I've had conversations with very top players that have been paid very big money, who are not 20, who have said to me, you know, this dressing room is intimidating. And those are people who have been paid 100 million plus, you know, and they're saying to me, you know, it's intimidating. It's a new dressing room. It's full of people from different nationalities that I've never had to deal with in my smaller club, etc. So, and also there was an interesting point that I discussed recently. I think it was with Mikel Arteta. He was telling me how that we need to think about the transition from academy to first team because it's a different rhythm of games and training. So how do you go from playing Saturday to Saturday to all of a sudden being Saturday, Tuesday? It is something that needs to be looked at. And he was making that point, and it really opened my eyes, and he's right, you know. So you've got some of those kids who come from the academy, they've barely played first team football, they've sent away, and now they become part of this, relentless machine of games after games after games, and then they're not ready even physically for that experience.
It's just occurred to me, Maheta, the season is approaching, but we're in the middle of summer. Is this a particularly difficult time for you? As I presume a lot of players are out of contract now, aren't they? Are they seeking your help in terms of getting clubs? Is that something you can advise them on?
Well, we've launched another initiative which I'm super proud of, which is a PFA summer camp. So it's a residential 10-week project whereby players during 10 weeks can come and train with us. So we basically, they are at a hotel. They stay with us from Monday to Thursday. They train as if they were at a club. And then in the evening, they get session around mental well-being, around education, around EDI, etc. In the hope that then they can find a trial or a club, etc. And we have between 25 and 30 players per week. This goes from Asmir Begovic, that joined us the first week, all the way to League Two players or a player that just dropped out of the league. So it's a very cool initiative. We did a pilot last year that worked very well, and this year we just went full 10 weeks for players who are out of contract because it's tough. And I was one of those. So a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is because I suffered that myself. It's tough. The first week you train on your own, fine. But then when everyone else goes back to clubs and you're on your own and you're in the park, just even mentally, it's tough. It's very tough.
Would you know what percentage of your members are currently out of contract?
Well, again, unintended consequence of the new rules. The more stringent, the less cash you have. The less cash you have, the more you tend to reduce the number of people on your squad. So again, we will see that over the next few years, but I see the trend will be, if they put a cap, what I'm going to be spending is focus all the money on the top 12, 13, 14, and then the rest I either reduce or bring people up from the academy. But at the same time, since I'm on so different fronts and so many competition, I as a manager cannot afford to play kids in the Champions League or play kids. So again, we're going to throw those guys into a situation that they're not ready for.
I guess, Maheta, this is a question you're also asked by a lot of League Two players. But you charge a flat fee of £150 annual membership to all players. Is there a case that big earning players should perhaps contribute more?
It's another good question that I get asked a lot. And, the first thing to say is to put things into context. The PFA is a very unusual union in the sense that if I'm a journalist and I'm part of the union, the minute I stop being a journalist, that's it. I no longer have access to the union. The PFA, once you've been a professional for 1 minute, you continue being able to access those services forever. So that it's very important to keep this in mind in terms of how we structure. And second, the way that we finance ourselves are basically through agreements with the leagues and the federation, but also through new source of income that we plan to grow commercially. And this is very much in line with what other unions do. So in fact, for example, in Spain, it is by law that the percentage of the TV rights are paid to the union. And the same applies in the US, where it's not by law, but the main source of income are agreements with the league. So yes, it's something that could have been explored or could be explored, but we don't see this being as a natural way forward, considering what other unions do and our current model in terms of how we fund ourselves.
One of the issues, though, with big earning players, we spoke to a high-profile lawyer who spends a lot of his time in football. His opinion was that the more famous a player is, the less likely he was to use the PFA in a dispute rather than turn to his own legal advisors. Is that the case? Well,
again, I think it's another excellent question, and I believe that the answer to that question has changed a lot over the last 4 years. Because it used to be the case that you'd go to some of those, more prominent players, and it was more difficult to explain to them why would you need a union. But nowadays, it's very simple. There are a number of things that, for as much as you have a lot of followers, you will not be able to solve on your own. Salary cap, fixture congestion, online abuse, those are topics that unless you are at the right table and unless you do it collectively, you will not be able to solve it. And it's something that now, and I guess for us, the confirmation that we have a role to play has been the fact that we've been able to basically have the national team, both female and male, come to us and ask us to represent them. For the first time, the PFA right now not only represents the national team players of this country, both on the male and female side, but also have the commercial rights. So they both assigned the commercial rights to the PFA because they understand the strength of the collective, and then they understand that there are certain issues that you need to discuss collectively with an organization which is independent, non-conflicted, and has no other interest than the players' interest. There is no financial gain that we're looking for.
You've accidentally answered my last question there, Maheta. So while I think of a new way of asking it, can I just bring you back to the question about your income streams? Because I need to sort of clarify that a little bit. Could you just, for my sake, being a bear of a small brain, and for some of our listeners, just clarify what your other income streams are then, apart from player subscriptions? You mentioned other countries getting a compulsory share of TV fees, etc. So what are your sources of income? And I think it's important to clear, you're not a charity, are you? The PFA is not a charity.
No, so basically, historically, the PFA has financed itself through a percentage of the TV rights money that the Premier League, the EFL, and the FA would be receiving. And it's a good question, because let me clarify something. This is not a favor they're doing us. It's not a donation. It's not a gesture of kindness. It's because historically, when you used to be appearing on TV as a player, you used to receive an appearance money. And what happened, my predecessor did a good job, because what he said is, let's swap that appearance money for a percentage of the TV money that the league would be receiving. So it was a transaction. The player gave up their appearance money in exchange for a percentage of something that used to be small but became very big. And in fact, our income has not grown in line with the growth of the TV money, but that's probably for a different podcast, and I'm happy to come back. But the reality is that this has never been a favor. It has been a transaction whereby we gave up something in exchange for something else, which was a percentage of the TV income of the Premier League, the EFL, and the FA.
I know this is a phrase from the 70s that tabloids still use. Is the PFA still a closed shop? Are players allowed to opt out of the PFA, or do they have to be a member?
Well, we have almost a 100% membership across all leagues. I think for me the question is more, how do we make sure that whatever the PFA does is not what I think is right, but rather what the members want us to do. And that's why, for example, for me, this period of the year is very important, because we do all those club visits. So I go personally to all those dressing rooms to try to understand, what do you want us to do? And a big part of our job is to make them understand that the PFA is not just for English players. It's for everyone. It's for everyone. And this has been a big part of our job, to try to make sure that people understood that we are here for everyone, and we can help in a number of different perspectives. Sometimes when you have an issue, but other time when you have an idea. And a good example of that, for example, is a scheme we launched with Trent Alexander-Arnold called the After Academy, whereby he had the idea to try to support players who dropped out of academy. He came to see us with the idea, and we developed a program which is basically a placement program, whereby he places young kids who are out of the game into the sponsor that he has. So it's a fantastic scheme. So we're trying to become not just a place to turn to when you have an issue, but also a place to turn to when you have an idea or a project.
That is a fantastic scheme, because we talk a lot on the pod about the prospects for youngsters that are released from clubs at the age of 16 and 17. Also, I have to say, for the prospects of players that are released at the age of 34, 35, without proper education, without proper financial training. Is that something you're very aware of as well?
Massively, and we try to tell them that, because believe it or not, they tend to be very insecure of the pitch. And a lot of them, see themselves as inferior because they don't study, or because they don't feel comfortable in a certain environment. And we say to them, you have learned so many things intuitively on the pitch that are so valuable of the pitch. Teamwork, resilience, the ups and downs, the pressure, etc. This is very valuable. People pay for that. People go to Harvard to do course on that, Yet you've learned this intuitively on the pitch, and you should leverage it. So we work a lot on trying to tell them this is very valuable, and don't see forcibly dropping out as a failure. What you've learned during your time at the academy is super valuable. Don't see it's not a failure. It's preparing you for the next step of your life in a different way.
Right, on to my hastily reworded final question. You're the world's oldest professional sports trade union, formed in 1907. I was going to ask you to explain to me why in 2024 professional footballers still need union representation, but you answered that really well just a moment ago, particularly in terms of collective bargaining. So let me ask you, I say it's hastily reworded, it's a new question, let's be fair. Let me ask you this, because you still hear this, before the first game of the season, you will hear this from a lot of football fans, you will hear this from a lot of journalists, a lot of pundits. What do you say to those people who say that the players have too much authority? The players are running the game, players' demands for money are the big issue in football.
It's a very good question again, I love it. And the question is, if the money doesn't go to the players, where does it go? And that's the bit that the fan needs to be concerned about. If the money does not go to the main star of the show, where does it go? Or where would you like it to go? Because there's only so many new stadiums you can build. There's only so many things that you can do. So if it doesn't go to the players, where does it go? And this is my concern. This is our concern. And we need to try to work hard on making sure that it goes to the right place.
Well, I tell you what the fans will say, Maheta. If it doesn't go to players, it goes to agents. And that annoys them even more.
Well, that's one constituency that receive the money, but, it can go also elsewhere.
Maheta, it's been a pleasure talking to you, especially as so far you've claimed that I've asked 4 very good questions and 1 excellent one. So I'm very happy with that, Maheta. It's been so good of you to give up your time. I know you're very busy. You're now my second favourite ex-Brighton player. No, you're my favourite ex-Brighton player, Maheta, on a very short list of 1. So thank you for giving us your time. And hopefully we can talk to you again in the next, because the way football is moving at the moment is such a volatile industry. It seems daily changes across the world. So hopefully we can talk to you again about the progress of some of your programmes and about the legal issues and so on.
I'll put on record that I don't have any problem with Palace. In fact, I get on very well with Steve Parish, and I've got a number of Palace fans. So the PFA enables me not to get into tribal kind of fights and be friends with everyone. So I'm very happy to stay in touch with you whenever you want.
Thank you so much, and well done for getting on well with Steve Parish. I mean, Kieran, leaving aside the blockbuster news that he played for Brighton, which I only felt, producer I put it in a slightly smaller font on the script. I believe in the hope I would overlook it. I mean, Maheta is a very cool guy with a wealth of experience. But the 2 things, he was very keen to talk about the anchor salary cap, so much so that he double-checked with me before. He said, have you got a question about the anchor salary cap? And I, of course, naturally went, yeah, of course. It's, hang on, it's question 7. Yeah, of course, Maheta. Why was he so keen to talk about that, Kieran?
It's because the PFA feel that it's an imposition of an attempt to have a salary cap by the clubs. They are very much of the view that there's an existing agreement between themselves and the Premier League as to any controls over costs. And this was effectively being helicoptered in, or it's an attempt to helicopter it in by certain club owners for the benefit of the owner. So if you're going to have a collective bargaining agreement, and I think this is ideally what the PFA and Maheta want, then let's all sit round the table and come to some form of agreement. They will be fully aware of what has happened in American franchise sports, where similar activities by owners has resulted in unhappy players, and at times players have been locked out of the ground. Employment laws in the US are significantly different to those here in the UK. So you can understand his wariness. At the same time, he's not ruling it out. He's just saying, if it's going to be introduced, can we see it first? Can we be involved in negotiations? And making sure that our members are not going to be disadvantaged as a result. Because if you do have this wage cap, it means, let's be honest, it's less money for millionaires who are professional footballers and more money for billionaires who are owners. So, the constant painting of professional footballers as not villains, but as people who, in the eyes of many, don't necessarily deserve what they earn because they play, they have a skill set which we'd all love to have, and we'd all love to. Let's face it, we'd all love to be professional footballers. I think there's an element of wage envy amongst many fans, but that doesn't seem to transcend to the wealth of the owners, and I think that's indicative of a much broader issue in society, is that you try to scapegoat those people who aren't as wealthy as the other person in the transaction.
Yeah, as Maheta said, if the players don't get the money, somebody else in football does get it, and it's not distributed downwards, is it? He used the phrase unintended consequences on several occasions, Kieran, especially about the Premier League, which implies that he thinks there's been an element of short-term thinking with many of the things we talked about. But player welfare was the issue that wove itself throughout the interview, Kieran, and I can't see that getting better before it gets worse, to be perfectly honest.
No, and I think the issue which Maheta is trying to reinforce is we want to see great football. And if you squeeze more and more matches out of players, either the players become injured and they can't play, so therefore you don't get the best versus the best, or the players are participating, and let's be honest, FA Cup final, if you're a Manchester United fan, you won it, you don't care. But it wasn't a good match. If we then go to the Euros, how many matches in the Euros did you say at the end of it? And let's face it, we're gentlemen of a certain age. We watched every single match. How many times did you walk away and say, well, that was a bit of a corker? Well, and it was the exception rather than the norm. So there is a qualitative issue, and I think it really does impact upon the game at that point in the season where it should be a huge celebration of the quality of football. I can't remember the most recent Champions League final where it was a great match. Yeah, they tended to be fairly dour affairs because the players are knackered. The players are nursing injuries. Yeah, okay, minor ones, but it means that they are 85, 90% fit instead of 100. And a lot of that is due to the fact that the intensity of matches and the demands that are placed upon players, because they are elite athletes, and it doesn't matter how much money you're being paid. If you're an elite athlete who is having to do more and more, then that's going to come with repercussions. Usain Bolt was the greatest athlete of this century, in my view. He didn't say, I'm going to run another extra 10 races this year, because he wanted to be the best on every occasion that he could, and that's why he was a success. And I think what Maheta is saying is surely the same should apply to football as well. If you take a look at the NFL, they pay, 18, 19 games a season. But the TV deal is worth more than the Premier League. More matches does not necessarily mean more money.
Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution as well, that'd be very kind of you, and it'll get you access to our chat community, our regular quizzes and much more. And you can do that by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you have a question you'd like answered on our regular Questions Tuesday pod, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. And don't forget you can follow us on Twitter, and you can find us on YouTube. And if you'd like to buy our book, which is coming out soon on paperback, you can find details on our website, priceoffootball.com. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.